A girl with paraplegia was trying to get home as fast as she could. The rain soaked through her coat, but she didn't stop. Couldn't stop. Then a soft, desperate whimper came from the bushes. A German shepherd lay in pain. Ashley's wheelchair creaked as she pushed herself down the muddy street, the old wooden houses of her small town leaning over her like silent judges. The wheels squeaked with every turn, a sharp, grating sound that echoed in the stillness of the afternoon. She was 10, small for her age, with tangled brown hair and eyes that carried too much weight for a kid. 5 years ago, a car crash took her parents and her ability to walk, leaving her with a pair of useless legs and a rickety chair that groaned like it might give up any day. She lived in a sagging little house near the school with her grandma, the only family she had left. "Careful, sweetie," Grandma's voice rasped from the porch as Ashley rolled up the uneven path. The old woman stood there, her silver hair pulled into a messy bun, her hands trembling as she clutched a half-finished scarf she'd been knitting. She was frail, her back bent from years of hard work, but her eyes softened when they landed on Ashley. "Don't want you tipping over again." "I'm fine, Grandma," Ashley mumbled, forcing a smile. She didn't want to worry her. Grandma already did enough, cooking thin soups from whatever scraps they had, mending Ashley's worn-out clothes with shaky stitches. At night, they'd sit by the dim lamp in the living room, Grandma spinning tales of brave princesses and talking animals while Ashley listened, her eyes sparkling despite the ache in her chest. "Tell me the one about the fox again," she'd say, curling up in her blanket. But even those warm moments couldn't erase the loneliness that clung to her like a shadow. School was worse. Randy, a hulking 12-year-old with a mean streak, ruled the playground like a king. "Hey, cripple!" he'd shout, his voice cutting through the chatter as Ashley rolled past. The other kids snickered, egging him on. One day he snatched her backpack and tossed it into a puddle, grinning as she struggled to reach it. "Oops, guess the orphan can't get it," he taunted. Another time, they pushed her chair into a ditch, leaving her stuck until a teacher wandered by. Ashley never fought back. She just bowed her head, letting the tears fall quietly, her hands clenched in her lap. Telling someone would only make it worse. Randy would call her a snitch, and the names would get uglier. After school, she'd sit alone under the big oak tree near their house, watching kids chase each other across the grass. Her fingers traced the edges of a little notebook she kept hidden in her coat. Inside were sketches. Stick-figure families laughing together. A girl with strong legs running through fields. She scribbled words next to them, messy and hopeful. "One day, I'll be brave. One day, I won't care what they say." The wind rustled the pages as she stared at the drawings, her dreams trapped in pencil lines. She'd lost so much. Her parents, her legs, her chance to be like everyone else. But under that tree, with the world buzzing around her, she let herself imagine a life where she wasn't the girl in the creaky wheelchair, the one everyone pitied or mocked. Grandma tried to shield her, wrapping her in hugs that smelled of lavender and old wool. "You're stronger than they know, Ashley," she'd whisper, her voice cracking with age. But out there, beyond the porch, the world didn't see strength. It saw a broken kid, an easy target. Ashley didn't know how to change that. Not yet. The April sky hung low and grey, spitting a cold drizzle that soaked through Ashley's thin jacket as she pushed her wheelchair home from school. The muddy street sucked at her wheels, making every turn a fight, but she kept going, her breath puffing out in little clouds. She was halfway down the block near a crooked telephone pole when a faint sound stopped her. A weak, pitiful whine cutting through the patter of rain. She tilted her head, listening hard. There it was again, coming from a tangle of wet bushes beside the pole. Ashley rolled closer, her heart thumping. Peering through the dripping leaves, she saw him, a scrawny German shepherd, his black and tan fur plastered flat by the rain. He was tied to the pole with a frayed rope, the knots so tight they bit into his skin. His ribs poked out under his matted coat, and his legs trembled as he tried to stand, but it was his eyes that caught her. Big, brown and desperate, flickering with a spark of something that wasn't quite gone. He looked at her, and Ashley felt a jolt, like he was seeing her, really seeing her, in a way no one else did. "Hey, buddy," she whispered, her voice soft as she leaned forward. "Who left you here?" The dog whimpered, his tail giving a feeble twitch. Ashley's chest tightened. She knew that look, abandoned, forgotten, like she'd felt so many times. She couldn't leave him, not in this rain, not like this. Her hands, chilled and slick from the drizzle, fumbled with the rope. The knots were stubborn and her fingers slipped as she tugged, the wheelchair wobbling on the uneven ground. "Come on," she muttered, gritting her teeth. The rope scratched her palms, but she kept at it, her arms shaking with the effort. Finally, the last knot gave way and the dog slumped forward, free but too weak to move much. Ashley didn't hesitate. She patted her lap. "Up here, okay?" He stared at her, then with a shaky push, climbed onto her, his wet fur soaking her jeans. The wheelchair creaked under his weight, but she didn't care. The trip home was slow. Rain dripped off her nose, plastering her hair to her face. But Ashley kept one hand on the wheel and the other stroking the dog's head. "You're gonna be all right," she murmured, her voice steady despite the cold seeping into her bones. "I've got you now." His ears twitched and he pressed closer, like he understood. When she rolled up to the house, Grandma was waiting at the door, her scarf half done in her lap. Her eyes widened as Ashley struggled up the ramp, the dog sprawled across her. "Ashley Marie, what in the world?" she exclaimed, her voice sharp with shock. "We can't afford another mouth to feed. Look at us, we're barely scraping by." Ashley's chin lifted, her wet hair sticking to her cheeks. "Needs me, Grandma," she said, her voice firm in a way it rarely was. "I'll take care of him, I promise." Her eyes blazed with something fierce, a determination Grandma hadn't seen before. The old woman sighed, her shoulders sagging. "You're too stubborn for your own good," she muttered, but she stepped aside. "He stays, but you're responsible. Don't come crying to me when it's hard." Ashley nodded, already turning her attention back to the dog. That night she dried him off with an old towel, her hands gentle as she worked through the tangles in his fur. "You need a name," she said, sitting cross-legged on the floor beside him. She thought for a moment, then smiled. "Ralph. That's it. Strong and friendly, just like you're going to be." He tilted his head, his tail thumping once against the warm rug. Over the next few days, Ashley shared her meager dinners with him, bits of bread, a spoonful of soup, watching his eyes follow her every move. She dragged an old blanket next to her wheelchair for his bed and sat with him each evening, her voice filling the quiet house. "Once upon a time," she began, spinning a story about a brave dog who saved a lost girl. Ralph rested his head on her knee, his breathing slow and steady. For the first time in years, Ashley didn't feel so alone. She had Ralph now, and he had her. Ashley woke each morning to the soft thud of Ralph's tail against the floorboards, a quiet rhythm that pulled her out of sleep. He'd started sleeping on the blanket she'd laid beside her wheelchair, his bony frame curled up tight. She'd roll over, peering at him in the dim light filtering through the cracked window. "Morning, Ralph," she'd whisper, and his ears would perk up, his head lifting just enough to meet her gaze. He was still weak, but something was shifting, something she could feel in the way he watched her. She threw herself into caring for him. With an old hairbrush she'd found in a drawer, she sat for hours, working through the knots in his fur. The bristles snagged on clumps of dirt, but she was patient, humming softly as she went. "You're going to look handsome soon," she told him, grinning when he nudged her hand with his nose. Food was trickier. Their pantry was nearly bare, but Ashley saved every scrap she could. Crumbs from her toast, the last bits of meat from Grandma's stew. She'd drop them into a chipped bowl, watching Ralph lap them up with a hunger that made her stomach twist. She skipped seconds herself sometimes, just to see his tail wag a little harder. One afternoon, she dragged an old crate from the shed and stuffed it with a threadbare quilt. "Your own spot," she said proudly, patting it. Rafe sniffed it, then flopped down, his long legs spilling over the edge. That night he slept closer to her than ever, his warmth seeping through the blanket. Ashley rested her hand on his back, feeling the faint rise and fall of his breathing. He wasn't trembling anymore. Day by day he grew stronger. His coat started to gleam, black and tan shining through the grime, and his steps steadied when he trailed her around the house. Grandma noticed it too. "He's filling out," she said one evening, peering over her knitting as Ralph padded after Ashley to the kitchen. She didn't say much more, but Ashley caught her slipping him a piece of bread under the table, her wrinkled hand quick and sneaky. "Don't tell your grandma I'm soft on him," she muttered when Ashley smirked. Ralph's presence was weaving its way into their little home, quiet but steady, like a thread stitching up something torn. Their bond grew in the small moments. Ashley started talking to him. Not just stories, but secrets she'd kept, locked inside. One night, under the flicker of the lamp, she traced a scar on her knee and said, "I used to climb trees, Ralph," before everything changed. Her voice wobbled, but she kept going. "I'd race the wind, and Mum would laugh, and Dad would lift me up like I was flying." Ralph rested his chin on her lap, his eyes steady on hers, and she felt the words spill out easier. "I'm scared sometimes. Scared they'd be sad seeing me now." He whined softly, pressing closer, and Ashley's fingers sank into his fur. It was like he understood, like he was telling her she wasn't alone in the dark. One rainy evening, she broke down. The thunder rattled the windows, and memories of that awful night, the crash, the sirens, flooded back. Tears streamed down her face, and she hugged her knees, choking on sobs. Ralph didn't hesitate. He climbed halfway onto her lap, his weight awkward but warm, and stayed there, his head tucked under her chin. She clung to him, her cries muffled against his fur, until the storm passed. When she finally looked up, the room was still, and Ralph's steady breathing anchored her. "You're my best friend," she whispered, and his tail thumped once, solid and sure. Not everyone saw him the way she did. Old Bradley, the neighbor with a limp and a gravelly voice, stopped by one morning while Ashley brushed Ralph on the porch. He squinted at the dog, his bushy brows knitting together. "That's no stray," he said, leaning on his cane. "Look at how he stands, shoulders square, eyes sharp. Reminds me of the dogs we had in the service. Military, maybe." Ashley paused, her brush hovering. "You think so?" she asked, curious but not pressing. Bradley shrugged. "Could be. He's got that kind of grit." She looked at Ralph, his head tilted toward her, and smiled. "It doesn't matter what he was," she said. "He's mine now." Ashley noticed the shift at school as spring stretched into longer days. Randy and his crew had grown bolder, their taunts sharper now that Ralph trailed her to the gate each morning. They'd started targeting her wheelchair, scribbling crude drawings on the armrests with chalk, tossing pebbles that pinged off the metal frame. One afternoon, as she rolled past the playground, a rock sailed through the air and grazed her shoulder. She flinched but kept her head down, Rafe's steady steps beside her the only thing keeping her calm. "Ignore them," she muttered to herself, gripping the wheels tighter. It got worse. One day, Randy blocked her path near the school steps, his buddies snickering behind him. He kicked the wheel, jolting her forward, and laughed when she gasped. "What's the mutt gonna do about it?" he sneered, eyeing Ralph, who stood alert at her side. Before she could answer, one of his friends shoved her chair hard, tipping it into the dirt. Ashley hit the ground, her palms scraping raw as she caught herself. Pain shot through her wrists and tears stung her eyes, but she bit her lip, refusing to cry out. Ralph growled low, his ears flat, but she grabbed his collar. "No, stay," she whispered, her voice shaking. Randy just smirked and sauntered off, leaving her to drag herself back into the chair alone. The breaking point came on a warm Friday afternoon. Ashley was heading home, Ralph pacing beside her, when Randy stepped out from behind a tree, a thick stick in his hand. His gang fanned out, blocking the narrow street. "Time to teach you and your dumb dog a lesson," he said, tapping the stick against his palm. Ashley's stomach dropped. "Leave us alone, Randy," she said, her voice small but steady. He laughed, raising the stick high, aiming for Ralph's head. "Let's see if he's as tough as you think." Ashley lunged forward, wrapping her arms around Ralph. "Don't touch him!" she yelled, her shout echoing down the empty road. Randy swung anyway, the stick whistling through the air. But Ralph was faster. He slipped from her grasp, dodging the blow with a fluid twist, then planted himself between her and Randy. A deep, rumbling growl rolled from his chest, his teeth bared, his eyes locked on the boy. He didn't lunge, just stood there, a wall of fur and muscle, radiating a quiet fury that froze the air. Randy stumbled back, the stick clattering to the ground. His face went pale, his bravado crumbling. Okay, chill, he stammered. Hands up. His friends bolted, their sneakers pounding the pavement as they scattered. Ralph's growl softened, but he didn't move, his stance unwavering until Randy muttered, "I was just messing around," and ran off, tripping over his own feet. Ashley exhaled, her hands trembling as she reached for Ralph. "Good boy," she whispered, her voice thick with relief. A few neighbors had seen it all. Old Bradley hobbled over, his cane tapping the ground. "Told you," he said, nodding at Ralph. "That's a trained dog. Knows how to protect without starting a fight." A woman across the street clapped softly, murmuring, "Brave little girl and her hero." Ashley barely heard them. She buried her face in Ralph's fur, feeling his warmth steady her racing heart. "You saved me," she said, and his tail brushed the ground once, solid and sure. Word spread fast. By Monday, Randy avoided her at school, his head down when she rolled by with Ralph at her side. The taunts stopped, replaced by wary glances. For the first time, Ashley felt the weight lift off her shoulders. She hugged Ralph that night, her voice soft. "You're my hero, you know that?" He leaned into her, and she knew she'd never face the world alone again. Summer rolled into the small town, painting the streets with golden light as Ashley and Ralph became a familiar sight. She'd push her wheelchair down the path, her arms stronger now from months of practice, while Ralph padded beside her, his head held high. Kids who once ignored her waved from their yards, and shopkeepers nodded as they passed. "That's the girl with the dog," they'd say, a hint of pride in their voices. Ashley didn't mind the attention anymore. With Ralph at her side, the world felt less heavy. Ashley felt the change inside her. One day, a younger kid at school stared at her wheelchair, his eyes wide with pity. She caught his look and smiled, something she'd never done before. "I've got Ralph," she said, patting his head as he sat beside her. "I don't need anyone feeling sorry for me." The boy blinked, then grinned, asking if he could pet Ralph. "Sure," she said, and soon a few others joined, their chatter filling the air. Ralph wagged his tail, soaking up the attention, and Ashley realized she wasn't just the girl in the chair anymore. She was someone they wanted to know. The mystery of Ralph unraveled one quiet morning. Bradley shuffled over with a faded photo, his hands steady as he handed it to her. It showed a German shepherd, ears sharp, standing beside a soldier in uniform. "Found this in an old box," he said. "Looks like you're Ralph, don't it? Used to run missions before his unit shut down. Left behind, I reckon." Ashley studied the picture, tracing the dog's proud stance. She glanced at Rafe, lounging in the grass, and shrugged. "Maybe," she said, "but he's not that dog anymore. He's ours." Bradley chuckled. "Fair enough, kid." Ralph rolled over, nudging her hand, and she laughed, the sound light and free. The next morning, she grabbed a frayed rope from the shed and tied it to Ralph's collar. A leash, but more than that, a bond. She pushed her chair out into the sunlight, Rafe trotting beside her, his steps sure and steady. The road stretched ahead, wide and open, and Ashley felt a quiet certainty settle in her chest. Life wasn't perfect. Her legs wouldn't heal, the past wouldn't change, but it was hers, and she wasn't afraid anymore. With Rafe and Grandma, she had everything she needed. Together they rolled forward, a girl and her dog, unbreakable under the bright, endless sky.